Becoming a parent changes everything. Your body, your mind, your relationships, your identity. I'm Katie, a mum of 3 boys and your host of By Your Side. Each week, I'll bring you honest conversations with trusted experts and real parents. No fluff, no shame, just the science and stories that help you feel seen, supported, and confident in your choices. Whether you're newly pregnant or knee-deep in toddler chaos, we'll explore everything from mental health and sleep to identity, guilt, and what it really means to raise a child today. Hit follow now and join us for new episodes every week. We're right here, by your side. Before we dive in, just a quick moment to say, if this episode speaks to you, please hit follow, leave a review, or send it to someone you know who's in the thick of it too. That's how we reach more new parents who need a little reminder that they're not doing it wrong. It's just hard. And don't forget, the conversation continues in the podcast lounge on the By Your Side app. That's where you can share your thoughts, ask questions, and help shape what we talk about next. All right. Let's get into it. And I know I always say I'm excited, but I am so incredibly excited for this podcast because Abbi has joined us this week as our very first expert by experience. And in my view, experts by experience are the experts. Abbi's a really good friend of mine. And when she found out what I was trying to do with this podcast on By Your Side, actually volunteered to come and talk to us about her experience about when she became a mum. So, Abbi, you kind of said, "Oh, this is such a good idea, and can I come and talk?" And what is it you want to share, and what is it that you want to kind of let people know about?
First of all, hello, Katie. Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm really honoured. I think the first thing that came to mind as soon as you told me what you were doing was, oh my God, I wished I'd have had that when I had my daughter nearly 13 years ago.
Oh,
As you know, I went through a mental illness straight, literally as I came out of hospital with my newborn baby. And even to this day now, I think it's hard for mums that, go in totally happy that they're having a baby, then come out really poorly, knowing where to go and where to get help.
so that's, Abbi, that's so stark, isn't it? And I know we've talked about this before, but I suppose I've not thought about it in the context of, I'm guessing, really excited about the birth going in and literally coming out and feeling like a different person, or how did that even feel?
I mean, just a little background. I wanted a baby since we got married from the age of 21. So when I was in my early 30s and found out I was pregnant after 3 miscarriages and, told that we probably wouldn't have a child. Darren was 10 years older than me as well. I was just absolutely beside myself. I had a fantastic pregnancy. I was the healthiest I'd ever been. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. And then literally went into labour, didn't have a very pleasant labour. Over a couple of days, I was induced. And then literally during the labour maybe, or hours after having Daisy, I now know that both Darren and my parents saw a change in me. Extremely anxious, really obsessive thoughts, health anxiety, and just literally not coping within hours of the birth.
So that's really interesting, isn't it? So they saw that change in you. And you are one of the most bubbliest, friendliest, outgoing people that I know.
Thank
It's
you.
like you are Mrs. Sunshine. So actually, that must have been quite. And you say now. I guess they didn't tell you at the time or say anything, did they?
They was as confused as I, as I was. I mean, I think initially they just thought I was exhausted from the labour. I'd obviously had lots of, different drugs because I was induced. I'd had a tachycardia episode during the labour. So my heart rate was...
What does that mean, Abbi? So what's tachycardia?
So my heart rate was well over 200 during the labour.
Right.
So we had to have a specialist come to see me whilst I was in labour, and then that wasn't going down after I'd had Daisy. Really interestingly as well, they were trying to help me breastfeed, and my heart rate was going higher and higher. And at the time, I thought that was anxiety because I couldn't do it, or,
Yeah.
it was new to me. But then I did, you know, find out that they said, oh, maybe, we won't breastfeed because it can make your heart go faster, it all to do with the hormones. So I had to go for ECG, quite soon after the birth. And they reassured me that, it would be fine. But straight away, health anxiety just descended on me. I thought I was going to die and lose my baby. So that was the initial
That must have been
anxiety.
so scary.
Was I even to this day now, I recently had some therapy, and it was interesting what came out. I was going through the whole birth again, and it was just this feeling after I'd had Daisy. It was as if the ceiling was about an inch from my head. So it was like I was being suppressed, and that's all I can remember was feeling like I was being squashed down, and my vision was narrow. And again, that is part of the tachycardia, makes you feel, really weird. But it was a mix of that, and then obviously, from knowledge as the years have gone by, we found that the hormone change when you get baby blues, obviously that's a known,
Yes.
after having a baby, but then normally you bounce back. But mine just got worse and worse.
Worse and worse. 'Cause, there's amazing research into it now, and what I certainly didn't know was actually after you've given birth, your brain actually changes. Your actual brain structure changes as a new mum.
Right.
It does as a new partner as well, so your partner's brain has a bit of a change, but not the same as it is for a new mum. And one of the
Yeah,
things that it becomes, there's like the really kind of the fight or flight bit of your brain that looks for kind of those scary bits, looks for danger, the
yeah,
amygdala actually becomes heightened. So
right.
I was reading 90% of mums actually are frightened for their baby or frightened of their well-being. So that's something that's quite normal and
Yeah,
happens. But what you're
yeah,
saying is, the baby blues can happen, and that feeling of not feeling like yourself and your
yeah,
life being changed and grieving the life that you've lost is a normal part of that. But
yeah.
it was more than that for you, wasn't it? And that how did that kind of play out?
Yeah, I mean, literally, I've got photographs of my face whilst holding Daisy before we left to come home with her. And the fear in my face is shocking to look at now. As you said, I'm quite a smiley person,
Yes, yeah,
and I'm just literally, it's as if it isn't me, which always frightens me when I look back at the photos. I was petrified to leave the hospital because I was absolutely convinced as soon as I walked out, something serious was happening to me, and I would never be there to look after Daisy. And then all I remember was the journey home again. It was just as if the ceiling was coming down and down and down on me. And we walked in the house, and then everything just went from bad to worse that evening. I was then flooded with intense, uh, awful, awful intrusive thoughts, things that I still struggle to voice now,
yeah,
that literally drove me to thinking I was a bad person, that I was going to harm Daisy, and that, I was suicidal. I
mm.
confessed to my mum within 12 hours of coming home that I thought I should end my life.
Oh gosh, Abby, firstly, I just want to stop there and say thank you so much for sharing this because
Yeah,
I really do appreciate that talking about it kind of surfaces it again. And I just really hope that everybody who listens to this gets
yeah,
to know and to understand so they can check where they are and that they
yeah,
find that courage like you did. And I know you're incredibly close to your family. So you
yeah,
felt that within 12 hours you could say something and do
yeah,
something with that. And I just really want to take this moment to say that if anybody is feeling this way, make that connection, reach out to somebody, anybody to
definitely.
voice, because actually once you voice, it's not just all going on in your head. And
No.
there's lots of research around this. Actually, once you let that stuff out, it actually reduces to some degree what's going on. But obviously for you, it was so incredibly serious. So what happened then? Because obviously your mum would want to wrap around you and just,
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
very hard because it's very easy for everybody to go, but you've got a new baby. What's the problem? It's very much a
Absolutely.
societal, what's the problem here? Rather than actually listening. So what happened then for you?
Well, literally, obviously, I was, mum and dad were living with us. We were all living together at that time. So mum took over that night with Daisy. I was trying to sleep, but just couldn't. And the next morning, I just said, I've got to go to the doctors. I knew that there was something seriously wrong. And I don't know where I got the strength from, but I voiced these thoughts to the GP of
That's
how I
really
was
brave,
feeling.
Abby.
Well, I thought I was in trouble. I thought because I was having these violent and awful thoughts. Not that I wanted to do these things, but I was having graphic
Yeah,
flashes of images of hurting Daisy. And I've got this tiny little baby that I'd wanted for my whole adult life.
yeah,
And then I was thinking, well, am I a monster? Why why am I having these thoughts? And the doctor understood. When I look back now, they recognised it, but just prescribed antidepressants, referred me to the crisis team, and then put me on diazepam there and then. And then, of course, as soon as I came home and started taking that medication, as most people, well, might know or might not know, you can feel a lot worse before you get better when you first go on quite strong meds. So things got worse and worse. And then a psychiatrist came out to the house within 24 hours to us. And that's how it panned out, really, for the first, few days. I had a team come out to the house, which was terrifying. I thought they were going to take my baby away.
yeah,
I thought I was going to go to prison because I thought I was going to do these things to Daisy and just totally taken over, not logical at all. And also not only thoughts about Daisy, but my mind was concocting all kinds of stories that it was all centered around that I thought I was doing wrong, that somehow I was a bad person. And and then the grief for wanting to be there for Daisy and then being ill and sleeping hell of a lot because
yeah.
of the meds soon kicked in. I felt this awful anger. And I feel guilty saying it because I feel like obviously I was so grateful that my parents and Darren were looking after Daisy, but I wanted it to be me looking
Yes.
after her.
And the guilt. So it's the guilt
Guilt was
and the
immense.
shame and the anger and the everything
Yeah.
just layering on top of each
Yeah.
other. And just so fantastic that you had people around you to notice it and that you
Yeah.
were brave enough to go, I need to do something and I need to speak to someone. And
Yeah.
that, I think, is the biggest takeaway for anybody at this point. Share what you're going
Yeah.
through. Don't just
Yeah.
listen to those voices in your
No.
head that are telling you
No.
all of that. Share it. It's really important.
They're so real. The voices are so, so real. The things that the voices were telling me were so opposite to my nature and my personality, but I couldn't see that.
No,
It was
which,
it was as if this awful person was coming out in me and I believed it.
yeah,
So I was terrified. I think the way I explained it to the psychiatrist when she came out was, when you have a dream and you're being chased by an axe murderer
yes, yeah.
and then you wake up and you think, "Oh my goodness, that's not real." That was how it felt, but with
You
no
weren't
relent.
waking up. You
No.
weren't waking up.
And that's how it felt.
That obviously there's some support there, kind of medical help and some support, but how did that pan out longer term? What did you put in place? What did you find? Was there support
There
available?
was support. I think when we look back now, we went wrong because I desperately didn't want to go into a mother and baby unit.
Right.
In hindsight, I should have. I wasn't really well enough to make that decision, but I pleaded so much to my parents and to Darren to keep me at home. The psychiatrist and all the crisis team could see I was safe. I'd literally got 24/7 care. And I was told that if I hadn't got my parents living there, then I would have been taken either on my own to a psychiatric unit or, in the best case, maybe be taken to Bristol with Daisy. And at the time, that petrified me because that, in my mind, validated that I'd gone mad. My baby was going to be taken away from me. But in hindsight, we look back now and perhaps think it might have been a better option because I suffered for maybe too long on the wrong meds.
Yes,
Where if I'd
whereas
have
they
gone
could
in,
have,
yeah,
yeah, but it's really interesting, isn't it, of the reason now and the rationale now you can see is because you felt it validated that you were
yeah,
wrong or doing wrong
yeah,
or a bad mom,
oh, yeah,
and
yeah,
that was where that decision was kind of coming from.
yeah. And I wish the decision really now had have been taken away from me. And I think mum and dad and Darren have an element of guilt over that, although they were doing everything in the world to protect me.
I don't doubt it.
Um,
Yeah,
they didn't want me to go. They didn't want Daisy to go. They were frightened.
yeah,
We were all really frightened, and all they wanted to do was, we'll look at, and they
yeah,
did. They looked after
we'll look
me and
after you, we'll
Daisy.
wrap you up.
It was only skipping forward a little, well, sort of 6 weeks. We paid private to see a fantastic psychiatrist that worked at the Priory in Birmingham,
Right, okay, yeah.
um, who specialised in postnatal illness. And after 10 minutes into the appointment, she said, "You have gone through postnatal psychosis at home. You should have been on X, Y, and Z and prescribed lithium and all different drugs," which I then ignored because I was too terrified and didn't believe it and wouldn't take those meds. She basically said I'd gone through it cold turkey because antidepressants take 6 to 8 weeks to kick in, where I needed an antipsychotic.
Oh,
So it was really, really scary because I then came out thinking, I don't want to go on all these meds now. And if I've come this far, I'm going to carry on. But I think it took me nearly 18 months to get anywhere near like me, where if I had have gone in and been on the right meds, it would have been a lot sooner. Yeah.
okay. And that's, I mean, that in itself is something that you don't hear about very often. I mean, postnatal depression is more prevalent. People talk about it more now,
Yeah.
thankfully, and talk about, that. And I think the more that we can normalize talking about it's really hard becoming a parent, and it is
Yeah.
okay to have that whole mix of feelings. It's okay not to feel like you for a while. And if that
Yeah.
persists, it's really important to get the support that you need and to talk honestly,
Definitely.
to be talking to people all the time about how you're feeling. But postnatal
Absolutely.
psychosis is not something that people talk
No.
about, which I think is just so beautiful that you were there going, Katie, I want to come on. I want to talk about this and share this because it's just so important that people go, oh, that's a thing and I need to be aware
Yeah.
of it.
Definitely.
And the fact
I'd
that
never
you
heard of
kind of
it.
went cold turkey for that
Yeah.
long. So you said by about 18 months in, you started to feel a bit more like you. So
Yeah.
what was that journey to that point?
So the first few months were just, an absolute chaotic blur, really, with, mental health, staff coming out to the house, lots of different meds, but not the right ones, as we know now. And a lot of suffering, really, real suffering, trying desperately to be a mum to Daisy, but not coping, with the thoughts. It was the intrusive thoughts that were really making, life really difficult. But then, of course, I sunk into a deep depression, which I'd never suffered. I've been anxious. I've been an anxious person, probably with general anxiety, but I'd never had depression. And sort of lost 3 stone. Just went into severe, wasn't eating.
Yeah,
uh, you know, totally. And you mentioned touched on it earlier. A massive grief for just wanting to be the Abby I was before I'd given birth.
yeah, to
Yeah,
for the
massive
life that
grief.
you used to have,
Yeah.
and it's okay to feel that because it's a massive transition,
Oh,
but it's just
definitely.
acknowledging that grief and not then letting the guilt to follow that of like, oh,
Oh,
now I feel so guilty. It's like, it's okay.
so
To do
immense.
something you grieving that feeling of feeling bubbly and bouncy and sunshine. It is normal and expected.
Yeah.
So what was that different? How kind of almost if somebody's not experienced depression,
Yeah.
what's the difference between that anxiety feeling and that depression? And how did you know, when did you know that actually this is different now?
The anxiety, I mean, I've always probably functioned with anxiety for many years. And the anxiety was brought down by the diazepam with after I had Daisy to a degree, although I was still quite agitated, pacing around in the first few weeks. I couldn't settle, couldn't sleep. That started to calm down, but then the depression was literally I'd got no interest in being, in a mum. I was just I was just trying to survive, but then the guilt was absolutely taking over me, where I just felt, all these years I wanted a baby. Why can't I be a mum? Immensely jealous of anybody that had had a baby and seemed happy. That made me feel like a monster. And I just went totally, I wouldn't see anybody, wouldn't talk to anybody other than my parents and Darren. The door would ring, obviously. Worst thing, obviously, of course, cards, flowers, presents, everything
Isn't
arriving. I
your
would
life
just,
fabulous?
oh, and I'd just
Congratulations.
run. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd just run. I was literally hiding in a bedroom, cowering. Please don't let anyone see me. I couldn't talk to anyone. I think the biggest thing my friends noticed was she's gone off Facebook. Where is she?
Okay.
Because
So
I,
it's
I
almost
would
like
share.
cutting those social ties in a way.
Yeah, gone. Yeah, totally gone. Even family I wouldn't speak to because I felt a huge failure. I just totally withdrawed from everything. And I remember trying to walk through Polperro village with the pram and people sort of looking at me because I just wasn't the Abby they knew.
Yeah.
And then I just my fear was that Abby was lost forever and this was my new reality. And I didn't believe I could live in that reality. I felt that that wasn't me. And then luckily, because I was so desperate for help, and although I was getting help via the crisis team, probably wasn't specialist help.
Yes.
I found a charity that helped me called APNI. They matched me with a lady that had gone through more or less mirror image of what I was going through.
Fantastic.
And she fed me night and day for months
Oh,
and months, and we're still friends.
oh, that's amazing.
And it was only when she gave me hope and asked me questions, questions like, you might not even be able to feel much love for your baby at the moment because you're so poorly, just validating all of these feelings that made me feel terrible. And I would say, obviously, other than my family, that was that was what got me through. Meeting Claire, she was literally my angel. And I still think to
Mhm.
this day, I might not have recovered the way I have without her support because it wasn't known as well 12 years ago, even postnatal illness.
No.
I was scrounging for information all over the internet. I think I've mentioned to you before, Katie, I was speaking to a lady in America because they were a little bit more advanced than us.
Yeah.
So I was very lucky that I came across the charity that's still going now.
Fantastic. So I will
Um,
drop the link to them in the
yes,
show notes because if
yeah,
anybody's experiencing this, do reach out. And I think
fantastic.
there's that validation is just so important because it's so easy as a new parent to think that you're on your own with no matter
Oh, yeah,
whichever feeling you're feeling, whether it is the grief or the jealousy or the anger or the upset, and whether that's something you're going through and transition through quite easily, or whether you experience postnatal depression or as you did
yeah,
experience that postnatal psychosis and then deep
yeah,
depression, you
yeah,
are not alone.
no,
You are not, and no matter what the voices in your head are telling you and those
yeah,
intrusive thoughts are telling you, you are not on your own and you're not the only person to have experienced this. So for
no,
you to have found Claire is just amazing. And that really shows that
It was.
strength of somebody going, is this how you're feeling? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
been there, done that.
Normalising it.
Yeah,
And she also said something to me straight away. She said, the fact that you've put so much effort into finding help shows how strong you are. And at that time, I was so vulnerable and so weak. And I thought, oh, I must be a good mum because I'm trying to get better.
yeah, you want to get
Just the
better.
magic words. Yeah, you want to, if
Yeah,
you weren't a good mom, you wouldn't be worried about, you wouldn't be this ill worrying about getting better to be a good mom. You'd just be, oh well.
yeah,
I was so
absolutely.
desperate, to be the mum I dreamt of being to Daisy. And then also I think a really, I'm sorry, this is just coming to my mind, but I think it's really important. Something Claire taught me was with postnatal illness, especially, which differs to anxiety and depression normally, is obviously you've got the hormones to deal with. So
Absolutely.
some days in your recovery, you'll think, oh, you have glimmers. She used to say, you'll get glimmers of you. And I used to think, oh, hang on, I've had a minute or so there where I felt like me. And over time, those would get longer and longer.
Yeah,
And in the end, that would be you again. And I started having these glimmers. And sometimes we'd sit up at 10 or 11 o'clock at night, me and mum. And I'd say, I don't want to go to sleep, mum, because I feel like me.
yeah,
And then sadly, I'd go to sleep and wake up and I'd be poorly again.
yes. But then
But
got longer.
hormones,
Yeah,
yeah, and it's hormones, obviously, again, which is quite normal, even if you're not
yes.
postnatal, isn't it? But she said that was what's unique to postnatal illness is you're fighting that
The roller
chemical.
coaster, the chemical roller coaster, as well
Yeah,
as
yeah,
everything else that you're coping with. And it was going to be a question I was going to ask you about,
yeah,
how did that start to move on and how did you look in those? I love that term glimmers.
yeah.
You'll start to see just glimmers of you. And was there a point that came where you suddenly went, oh, I'm me again, or things have really shifted? Was it a particular point or was it gradual? How did that?
It was very, very gradual, and I was very frightened to believe that I could possibly, because then I can't possibly have my baby and be happy. Surely this can't be real. I was
Yeah,
so frightened of going back
yes,
because with those glimmers, I'd feel well and then it'd go. And then I'd have a day that was good. And then I had a chart, and every day we'd put a star on if I had a glimmer.
yeah,
And then some days it'd be 2 stars and some days there'd be none.
yeah.
But then I could look back on a really bad day and go, oh, actually, I did have a good day, because it's quick to get swallowed back up in the bad days and think you're going backwards.
Yes, that's a really good top tip, isn't it, about those charts? And I'd
Oh,
recommend that
totally.
for anybody at any
Yeah,
point. If you're just feeling a bit blue or not feeling right, having that chart
yeah,
go like, oh, okay, so this isn't all the time, because it
yeah,
can
because you
feel
believe
like
it
all the
is.
time.
Totally. And another thing I did, which I still do to this day, but for different reasons, when I was feeling well, the next day when I wasn't very well again, I wouldn't believe it. So I started doing video captures of myself, talking to myself,
Yeah,
saying, when you're not well tomorrow, believe that you felt really well today and this was positive. And you won't believe this when you're listening, but believe it. And because it was me,
yeah,
proof, rather than somebody going, don't worry, you'll feel okay again.
yeah,
But listening to myself, it made me believe that, yes, I did have a good time, a good day, and I was feeling happy to be a mom. So if I'm feeling low, I took comfort in those videos.
that's amazing. That's self-coaching and setting that
Yeah,
up to say,
yeah,
You've got this. You have got
yeah.
this, and this is real," which is
Because the
just
mind's
so
so
cool.
clever, isn't it? Once you're
Oh,
in the
the
dip,
mind will throw everything at you,
oh yeah,
from the first intrusive thought, it will then it's like a cascade of then guilt, then anger, then jealousy, and
yeah.
grief, and guilt again, and it's that kind of a whole emotional cycle that follows
Oh,
those thoughts.
definitely. I know we used to speak in the past about that monkey, and I can look back now, and it literally, no matter what answer I had for that thought, it would think of something worse. It would just naturally, but have you thought of that? Well, actually, if you resolve that, well, I bet you haven't thought of that. And it would just carry on and on and on. And of course, when you're not well, you can't fight it, can you?
No, and the book that you're referring to, or the monkeys and the chimp paradox, and I'll drop a
Right.
link into this as well. It's a great overview of that. Sometimes we're not aware that we've got these thoughts at all.
No.
You don't actually see them as what they are, which is a separate brain process. It's almost like
Yes.
white noise in your head, and the white noise is there and designed to do what it thinks is keeping you safe.
Yeah.
And actually, it can really mess things up if you listen to it too much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think looking back now as well, they were obviously I've looked into this so much since it happened
Yes.
and we didn't have as much knowledge, but also they diagnosed that I'd got extreme OCD following the birth
Okay.
as well. So again, those thoughts were on absolute overdrive because they were trying to keep me and Daisy safe.
Yes.
We're like
I
looking out for
can't even
danger.
imagine. How do you cope with that, Abby? Because I'm just thinking by the sheer nature of babies, it's,
Yeah,
they're so vulnerable and so
yeah.
messy. So how did that show up for you and how did you manage that?
The worst thing for me was, it- I mean, it sounds when I voice it now, it sounds so simple, but it was the sterilising of the bottles. I imagine there was germs all over these bottles. You remember the little carousel with the
Yes.
bottles in?
Yeah.
I I couldn't grasp in my mind. I know now that my mind wasn't functioning. It was in the wrong zone,
Yeah.
which I found out is a thing. You know, it was quite right that my brain wouldn't have been able to do basic tasks because I was so poorly.
Yeah,
So I
absolutely.
couldn't, yeah, I couldn't function, but also I didn't trust anyone else to do them. So I
Oh,
was in
massive.
such a corner. You know, I was so poorly, but I would be, I've got to go and sterilise them bottles. They've got to be right. And then I would look at them, they'd have little driplets of water on, which was fine. It was just steam.
Yeah.
No, I couldn't cope with that. And there might be some germs, but if I wiped them with a tissue, was I transferring germs? Daisy was going to get the germs and die. Not just be poorly, die. It was
Yeah, everything's
extreme,
worst
everything.
case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it would be my fault and I'd done something wrong. And it would all go back to you'll be in prison. You've done something to your baby. It was so irrational. But the OCD was just on absolute overdrive, anything to do with feeding. Anything really that was probably any area of responsibility. I couldn't cope. But then I didn't trust anyone else either because
So
she was at
that's really hard because again, just to
so
say, yes,
cornered.
can you do it? I mean, functionally, it's when your brain has that much to cope with and you're in that state,
Yeah.
it's like a computer or a laptop with all the tabs open. It's like
Yes.
the blue circle, isn't it? It's kind of there's just you can't yet
No?
know if you ask someone else to do, which is really hard to say because that's a functional brain going, oh, I need help. Can you do
Yes.
this? That takes a lot anyway, but
Yeah.
then to do that but to give that to someone else just really kicks off then the grief and the anger and the because
Yeah.
someone else is doing it rather than you.
Yeah. And then I would believe that I mean, I didn't dream they possibly had a child and brought, me up fine. I know.
Your mum
No,
that brought you up is
yeah,
still not
no,
gonna be okay.
no, they'll get it wrong. You know, they no, they couldn't win. They were trying so desperately to help me, but we always said, imagine if you'd broke both legs and you couldn't get up and walk and fetch your baby, and you'd have to have help.
Yes.
I couldn't see it like that. I still thought I should be doing everything, even though I was so, so poorly. And obviously, it was only when the meds took hold, I wasn't able to do a lot for a while,
Yeah.
that I had no choice to give in and accept a lot of help. But I remember lying in bed, it was really difficult every morning. Every morning, I think I woke and it all flooded back
Yeah.
that
Okay.
I'd had my baby and I was poorly. So the mornings were always the worst. But I could hear downstairs, obviously, mum and dad and Darren buzzing around sorting Daisy out. And my most guilty feeling is I used to think, I want them to be up here with me. I want my mum. I want that. That's my mum. I reverted to a child
Yeah.
where I literally just wanted my mum back, and she was doing everything to look after all of us. But I felt jealous.
Yeah.
And that's something I feel really guilty for saying, but that was huge at the
Well,
time.
but that's okay, isn't it?
Yeah,
Actually, why is
yeah,
it not normal to go, "Do you know what? I've just been through." I mean, regardless, and I'm not saying regardless of the whole kind of postnatal psychosis,
yeah,
deep depression, regardless of that, you've just been through the biggest change of your life. Your body has
yeah,
been through the biggest thing it's ever going to have to do.
yeah,
And that's normal to think, "Do you know what? I want someone to look after me. And where do I feel safe and who do I feel safe with? My mum." That's a
yeah,
normal thought. But isn't it
yeah.
so amazing that brains then make that into, well, that's you're jealous, that means you're a bad person. And rather
No,
than just going, "Do you know that's really normal to want someone to look
yeah,
after me?" And it's
absolutely.
yeah. So I mean you started to see more of those glimmers and that
I
glimmer
did.
became you.
I did. And I think also diet was something we looked at, and that helped me. You know, I had a big list from the charity of foods that would help my brain function better, and we stuck to that religiously because I wasn't eating, and then we were worried that I would end up physically really
Yeah.
poorly from not having the right nutrition. So that helped, eating right, and then I think it was Mother's Day, so sort of 6 or 7 months after having Daisy was the first time I actually went out. We went out for a meal, and I had maybe an afternoon where I felt, I was coping out and about. I didn't want to be around people I knew, so we went far. We
Yeah,
went over to Woolacombe. All when I look back now, it feels as though I was ill for those whole sort of 18 months, 2 years. But when I look back at photos and see the way I'm looking at Daisy and holding her, showing so much more affection than I did in the first few weeks, I was obviously being more of a mum earlier on than my brain would let me know.
that's really interesting,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah, it's when I look at photos now and I can see in my eyes,
Yeah.
I'm really in awe of her like I always thought I would be.
Yes.
How you imagine a new mum is.
Yeah.
I didn't feel it for a long time. I didn't think I was showing that affection
Yeah.
because I was so poorly. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I hadn't got the brain space and I was so heavily depressed.
Yeah. But by that, and I love the way that you've talked about that video evidence, but that photographic evidence of actually in that moment
Yeah,
you did, but your
yeah,
brain was too quick to go like, "Oh, no, 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 that's not possible. That's not."
no,
So it took you a while to see those glimmers, but those glimmers were happening there and
yeah.
that all was there.
And then eventually those all moulded into, I started going to Lanreth Ladybirds play group.
Oh, toddler group. I
I
mentioned that.
did.
So a play group or a parent group, and we
Oh,
have a really lovely podcast. Again, I'll drop the link into it about the
yeah,
importance of finding that. And a big
so
shout out to
important.
Sandra who ran that,
Oh,
you know, the backbone of that toddler group. But
unbelievable.
what difference did that make for you to connect with other parents and be around other
Massive.
parents?
It started off with Clint Pumpkins. I had a friend that had heard I was poorly who also attended Clint Pumpkins playgroup, and I bumped into her by chance and she said, "Why don't you come?" And I was like, first of all, I used to think, I'm not a real mom. I can't go to that. I'm this mom that's ill. I can't go mix with normal moms. And she said, "Just come. I'll be there. I'll wait for you." And I remember sitting down on the floor, and Daisy was quite young, maybe just sitting up in my arms. And I was terrified, and I felt like everyone was judging me. And I had maybe an hour, 2 hours of just everyone normalizing how I was feeling. And I opened up really quick about everything I'd gone through.
Yes.
And I'm still friends with them girls now. And they introduced me to Sandra and Ladybirds. And then I just lived for Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays to go to those 3 groups.
Because that connection is just so powerful.
Oh, and I felt like a real mum.
Yeah.
Actually, I was I'm a real mom. I'm going to a baby group with my baby. And I was doing it on my own. That was the biggest thing because,
Yeah.
these things are coming back to me now. I wouldn't go out with Daisy on my own.
Yeah.
I always needed Darren or mum and dad with me. And then I braved it and went to those groups alone. And I think that was the first time I felt like I'm a real mum and she's my baby.
Yeah. And
And it's
the
funny,
beautiful thing is
yeah,
that normalizing is because nobody's got it sussed.
no,
Even those moms who look like perfect on Instagram or just like, oh, joyous day, it's not real. It's
real.
hard. And
It
for,
is.
I bet that was so powerful for people to just
It
be there
was
and connect.
massive. It really was. And I think one of the, like you've just said, I think one of the mums said, I don't even know if I like it. I don't know if oh God, have I done the right thing being a mum?
Mm.
I just, oh my God. And I was like, oh my God, these women know that it isn't all unicorns and rainbows.
Yes.
And it's not me that's a bad person for thinking these things, and that was without her being, she wasn't poorly. She was just being honest,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But I
Absolutely.
think I'd built up also we looking back at my nature, and I think you might see this in me, Kate, you know me so well. I'd imagined it all to be, I'd ordered a white pram, I'd had white carpet in the bedroom, Daisy's wardrobe was full.
Who has
I
white
know,
carpet in the bedroom?
exactly. So you can see where I was heading.
Yes.
Without the illness, I imagined, I'd wanted this baby all these years. I was having my little girl. And then obviously all that just came down
Yeah.
bang. And then I couldn't even go in that nursery for months. Mum and dad and Darren used to have to go in and get the clothes for me because that was my dream. I was going to be in that room breastfeeding my
Exactly.
little baby. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I couldn't set foot in there.
No.
So, it was only as time went by that I realised that I'd set up this massive image that wasn't real in my head.
Yeah.
And I think that added to the shock of being a mom,
Yeah. Because
and it
it's that
wasn't like that.
perfect, almost it's like a perfect prison, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's like you're putting
yeah,
yourself in a perfect prison. And
yeah.
babies don't need perfect, they
No,
need present. And oh gosh,
yeah,
Abby, you were through the thick of it, through everything, you were present for Daisy. And that's
yeah,
really obvious through everything that you fought for. And you were
yeah,
there, through the toughest of times, you were present.
yeah.
And that's what babies need. That's just, oh, I'm getting all
I
emotional.
know.
Oh, honestly. So I think, oh gosh, so many questions still, but I think the biggest one for me, I think at this point would be if you could go back to you
Yeah,
at that point with
yeah.
everything you know now and everything that you've done, what advice would you give yourself?
I think the biggest advice I would give to myself was, oh, it's really hard. To have the knowledge that that you'll get better, because my biggest fear was I would never be able to be the mum I dreamt of with Daisy. I would never be happy again. Uh, I didn't feel safe. I just wanted to feel safe and have hope. And I think, if I could have just, well, Claire, I guess, did that for me. She gave me hope that she had been there and got better,
Yeah.
because I think that is the key thing. You're stripped of any hope of ever being able to be the mum that you've always dreamt of.
Yeah.
So, finding someone that can relate to whatever degree of, of someone's postnatal journey, that someone has been there and it does get better. And, you will have that, that relationship. It doesn't make you a bad mum for being poorly. It's purely an illness,
Yeah.
like any other illness. So it would be knowledge that one day it would be in the past,
Yeah.
and that you'll recover. Definitely. That would be
Oh,
my big takeaway.
Abby, that's
You know
amazing.
even to this day now, I struggle to say my child or my daughter, or I still sometimes feel that I'm not, how can I possibly be a mum? I felt such a failure that I have to correct myself now and realise that I have brought a child up. She's
A
nearly 13.
beautiful
Thank you.
Lovely. Oh, Daisy's just so lovely. And
Thank you.
there is nobody in the whole world that's ever met you and met you with Daisy who would ever have guessed that you went through
No,
so much to get to where you are now.
no, we are
And,
so close.
and it's one of those things that we just need to be aware of what's going on in our heads because it's not always true. And as
No,
you've said, you do get better. And as you've said,
we do.
you are so close. And that's just such
We
a
are.
beautiful thing. And I cannot thank you enough, Abby, for being, without a doubt, my favourite guest on the
You know,
podcast so far. And I just want to say thank you. And I love you so much for sharing and your bravery and your story. And for anybody
you're
who's listening to
welcome.
this, please share it with someone who needs to hear it too.
Please do. Definitely. Thank you, Katie, so
Oh,
much. I'm
thank you.
really proud that you're doing something to help other mums out there that, that need it at the most crucial time of their life.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you,
Wow.
Katie.
If this episode gave you something to think about, made you feel a little more human, or helped you feel a little less alone, it would mean so much if you could subscribe, or leave a quick review. It's a small thing that makes a big difference. And if you want to talk some more about what came up today or ask a question for a future guest, come hang out in the podcast lounge inside the By Your Side app. It's free to join and it's full of people who get it. Until next time, you've got this and we've got you right here by your side. Just a quick note before we finish. What you hear on this podcast is here to support you, not to replace professional advice. Everyone's situation is different, so if you're worried about your own well-being or your baby's, please speak to a qualified healthcare provider. You deserve support that's tailored to you.